Hello, my name is Chris Vaughn, and I'm running for Oregon's Congressional District 2. I've been asked by the Wasco County Democrats to answer a series of 7 questions and to make a small introduction of myself. So that is what I'm making this recording for. But anybody's welcome to watch it. Um, so the reason why I am running for Congress is I feel like Congress should look like the people it represents. Currently, a large portion of Congress is made up of millionaires and very wealthy individuals. But yet that's a small percentage of the population, yet that's the majority of Congress. So what I would like to see is more working class Americans representing working class Americans in Congress. Just like we want to have a multitude of different ethnicities and religious backgrounds in Congress, we also need to have a wide variety of congressional representation that is working class. So that is one of the main reasons why I have decided to run, is I want to give a voice for working class Americans. In addition, I support a whole series of progressive values such as Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, the $15 an hour minimum wage, and comprehensive immigration reform. So I'm going to go ahead and answer a few of the questions that I've been asked to answer, and hope I can get your support. Thank you. Okay, so the first question I've been asked to answer is this: how has the coronavirus pandemic affected your view on the state of health insurance and healthcare in the U.S.? And what are your thoughts about the response by the federal government so far about the coronavirus? So I'll say that how it's affected my view on the state of our health insurance is it's just hugely highlighted the fact that we don't have adequate health insurance in this country. Millions of us, a large percentage of the population does not have any health insurance at all. And those that do are often have to forgo care because maybe they don't have enough money to pay out of pocket expenses. So it can, even when you have health insurance, there's often huge deductibles involved for the year, and also individual deductibles that you have to pay when you go to receive treatment with your doctor. And a lot of Americans just can't afford that because of the high cost. And it would be much cheaper overall to switch to a Medicare for all system. You get rid of all the administrative costs involved and the for-profit part of it, and it actually makes it cheaper. We can get better health care, and it will cost less money to do a Medicare for all system. All the other industrialized countries do it, and I think it will work much better. Everybody will have care. The other thing is about, as far as the response goes, as far as how our government has responded, I think individual states have often responded better than the federal government as a whole. I am fairly pleased with the response that Oregon has had during this. We locked things down fairly early on. People started isolating and staying at home. And so far, that appears to be working because, as a lot of people know, the state of Washington had a much bigger outbreak than us early on, and we're right next to Washington. Our state borders Washington. And so it could easily spread rapidly to this state. But I think that the numbers show that it's been held fairly low, that we were successful, I think, in flattening the curve. So we might not have reached our peak yet, so we don't know for sure. But to me, it seems like the state of Oregon did a good job. As far as the federal response goes, I do not think it was adequate at all. We weren't prepared with having masks and the proper PPE for our healthcare workers. And we were given sometimes not the best information early on. Like we were told early on that there's no need to wear a mask, and now we're being told that if we wear a mask, we protect ourselves and we protect others. And a lot of people are having a hard time finding masks now, and so that's why a lot of people are at home making masks and trying to use their ingenuity to try and solve the problems. But I think that overall the response has not been adequate on the federal level. And that is my answer for that first question, and I'll read a second. Okay, the next question I've been asked is, one of the reasons Republicans have been able to maintain power in spite of the fact they represent a shrinking proportion of the population has been their voter suppression efforts. If you are elected, how important will this issue be for you, and what will you do about it? Well, I think this is a very important issue because it's at the heart of our democracy. I mean, if people are suppressed from voting, then we don't have a true democracy. I think what happened with the Voting Rights Act basically being gutted has been horrible for democracy. After it was gutted, you basically saw various states, especially red states, trying to pass all kinds of rules and regulations, making it much more difficult for people to vote. And that always disproportionately affects minorities and communities that have been marginalized. So I think we need to re-strengthen the Voting Rights Act and enforce it. And another thing we can do is follow the wonderful example set by Oregon. Oregon has one of the best voting systems in the country. We all vote by mail. And so a couple of weeks before the election, you receive a ballot in the mail. You fill it out in the leisure of your own time at home. You then return that ballot. You can either drop it off down to the election office or you can mail it back in. It's very easy to do. There's been no big fraud or anything like that involved with vote by mail. It's very safe, easy way to do it. They can verify when you mail in the ballots. The other thing it does is it prevents people from hacking voter machines. So you got foreign governments and other bad actors trying to hack into our voting machines and change vote tallies and stuff. Well, they can't do that if there's no voting machines that people are voting on, where it's all done by paper ballot. And so there's a record. It's paper ballot. There's a record of how you voted. And the only counts that might be done on a computer are when the ballots are put into a computer to be counted at the end of the vote. And so there's much less likelihood of a hack taking place. So I would push other states. I would try and get other states to realize how good of a system that Oregon has and to also enact a similar system in their states. And by doing that, it gives everybody a much easier access to be able to vote. Okay, the next question I've been asked is, how will you work with any proposals that are brought forward for public lands protection, such as wilderness protection here in Congressional District 2? Well, the environment and the public lands are extremely important to me, just like I think they are to a lot of Americans. We need to find ways to use public lands so that we do get to use some resources from the land, but we also need to protect those resources and use them wisely. We need to have wilderness areas set aside to protect various species and different plant life. So I will always take a look at any proposals for wilderness protection and see if it makes sense. And if it does, then I will certainly support that. Like I would most of the time, probably support some type of wilderness protection for various areas, especially if they're unique. One thing I see is that, back 100, 120 years ago, back in the early part of the last century, timber was really big thing, especially in Oregon, and a lot of the forest was clear cut. We can never go back to doing something like that again, because what happened is you have a variety of plant species, a variety of tree species. It's all clear cut. And then when we replanted a lot of that, we replanted it with maybe one species. Well, then that leaves it susceptible to disease and to possibly being wiped out by certain diseases because there's no variety. And so we need to make sure going forward that when we use the force that we selectively cut. I think we should stay away from the old growth areas that remain, because those areas are precious and there's only a few of them left. Um, and so when I look at the use of the lands, that's how I look at it, is we need to use it wisely, and we need to make sure that the proper protections are in place. Okay, the next question I've been asked is, government services such as education have been incredibly interrupted by the coronavirus pandemic. As schools and other institutions efforts to provide their services online, some citizens may not have equal access to those services. Would you be willing to enact legislation that would enable services to continue online should we face such circumstances again, even if it means that not everyone would be serviced equitably? Well, we probably weren't totally prepared for what's going on right now, and services might not be equitable right now. I think a lot of people probably are being left behind. They might not have adequate internet service at home. So I think going forward, any future legislation needs to address that this could happen again. We may have more outbreaks of the coronavirus in the future. It may happen that we have to isolate at particular times in the future as well. So what I would do is I would say that any legislation needs to definitely include the people that would normally be left out. That's, like I said, that's one of the reasons I'm running for Congress, is I think that working class Americans are often left out because they're not represented well in Congress. We need to make sure that the services are equitable. One thing I can think of is perhaps there could be some kind of provision that if there is some kind of isolation order taking place and people have to isolate at home, maybe the internet providers would be required to provide service to everyone during that time. And people that couldn't afford it or something, maybe the government would have to step in and reimburse the internet providers for that, or something to that effect. But I could see where we could probably do something that would get past that, where everybody would be serviced equitably. Okay, and the next question I've been asked is, the ability of society to meet a common threat depends on the degree of trust the citizens have in their government. Given that 50% of our country does not trust the president or Congress, how will you, as our rep, help restore trust in government? Well, I think that's a great question. And I think that a lot of people don't participate in our democracy now because they are frustrated. They don't think that they're represented by Congress. They don't think that they're represented by the president, any president, whether it was Barack Obama or now Donald Trump. So I think the way we get back to gaining that trust is to work on behalf of the working Americans, the vast majority of Americans. Most Americans, I think, are seeing that the middle class is kind of becoming a fading dream that they're never going to achieve. Back in the 50s and 60s, we had a great economy. The corporations and individuals that were wealthy paid a much higher income tax rate, but yet our economy did fine. And Americans were being paid a living wage during that time for the most part. Unions were very strong and helped to get better wages on behalf of workers. In the 1980s, we started with the trickle-down economics, and it's just been disastrous. We've seen the huge deficits created by the trickle-down economics. We've seen how corporations' tax rates have been cut way down to where some of the wealthiest corporations are paying $0 in taxes. Those same corporations paying wages that aren't fit for anybody to even be able to live on, or most of their workers to be able to live on. So I think how we regain the trust is by having a higher tax rate to tax the corporations and the wealthy individuals, so that we can go back to providing proper services for those people that need it. We need to go to a Medicare for all system to where everybody is covered on insurance, because right now people see where they're left out. Millions of Americans don't have insurance. We're the only industrialized nation that does not have health insurance for all our citizens. So basically, to me, I see that most Americans think that they're being left out. And in order to get people back to voting, the people in the middle that aren't Democrats or Republicans, those people need to see that people in Congress are working for them, that the president is working for them. And so that's what I will do when elected to represent this district. I will fight for working class Americans, and I will give them a seat at the table. Okay, the next question that I've been asked is, Greg Walden voted to open the outer continental shelf to oil drilling. He voted yes on banning EPA from regulating greenhouse gases. He voted no on enforcing limits on CO2 global warming pollution. He voted no on tax credits for renewable energy. He voted no on removing subsidies for oil gas exploration. And the list goes on. Votes like this have earned him a rating of 0% from the Campaign for America's Future. If you are elected, how will your voting record compare to his on energy issues? Well, for those people that don't know, maybe people that don't live in this district, or people that do live in this district that haven't followed politics much, Greg Walden has been the Republican that represented this district for about 20 years now. And I think his record on the environment has been absolutely horrible. And I would have voted the exact opposite of the way he voted on each one of these issues. I think that it's so important for us to back a Green New Deal. I think we need a Green New Deal that's going to provide good paying jobs for Americans to transition us from a fossil fuel economy to an economy with a sustainable solutions. And so that I would strongly push that. And I think that that's how we gain trust from Americans, because I think all Americans want a clean environment. They want us to have sustainable solutions, but a lot of them are scared to transition because they're worried about losing a job that they might have right now. So by enacting the Green New Deal, we can show them that we can have good paying jobs for you. We'll be able to transition this, and we can have good paying jobs for Americans and still have a sustainable energy policy and still protect our environment. So that's what I would do, is I would do everything the exact opposite of Greg Walden. Okay, and the last question I've been asked by the Wasco County Democrats is, what is the one question you are hoping we would ask but didn't, and what is your answer to it? Well, one question I haven't heard talked about at all in the campaign is immigration. I think it's been kind of put on the back burner because so many things that have happened with President Trump that it's hard to keep up on important issues. And then also, we're dealing with this pandemic right now, and so a lot of things have fallen on the back burner. But I think it is very important that we enact some kind of comprehensive immigration reform. We've been talking about this for 20 or 30 years, and nobody's taken action on it, Republicans or Democrats. We need to take action on this. We need to get this resolved. So first off, I would say that family separation should never, ever happen. Families that are coming to America seeking immigration should never be separated from their children. It just should not happen. I don't understand how we even fathom that could happen in this country. So I would say that we put an end to that, first of all. Secondly, I think that we need to streamline everything. We need to, I'm okay with having a strong border and protecting our borders. So I'm fine with that, but we need to streamline the system. When immigrants come in and they do apply, they shouldn't be held in detention for month after month after month. They should have a background screen, and if we haven't decided their case yet, then they should be released into the community to live with a sponsor, and we should do it that way. I think that the fact that we use private detention camps, that should not be a thing. Private prisons and private detention camps should not be a thing, because putting a profit motive in imprisoning people is just wrong. And what it does is it makes those companies that provide those private detention centers and those private prisons, then they try to get legislatures to pass legislation that'll make it easier to put people in prison, easier to put people in detention camps, because then they make more money. So that should not be a thing. Any kind of detention camp or prison should only be run by the government on a nonprofit basis. So anyway, to get back to the question is about, I wish that, we'd be asked more about immigration reform. And I am strongly for a comprehensive immigration reform that streamlines everything and sets, good policies for bringing people here to work in jobs where they're needed, and provides a clear path for citizenship that may take a while, but it shouldn't be full of all kinds of red tape that makes it almost impossible for somebody to become a citizen. So that's what I would strongly support, is a comprehensive immigration reform. Thank you. Okay, and so it concludes all the questions I've been asked by them to provide. So I would just like to close out by saying that I want to provide working class Americans a seat at the table. And if you vote for me, if you support me, I will try to give you that seat at the table. And I will work on behalf of working class Americans for Medicare for all. I will work for a $15 an hour minimum wage. I will work to restore adequate levels of taxation to corporations and wealthy individuals so that we can provide the services that are needed. I will work towards having an infrastructure program that would provide good paying jobs to rebuild bridges and roads that are in dire need of repair. I will fight for a Green New Deal. So these are all things, progressive values, that I will fight strongly for. And I hope that I can earn your support, and I hope that you will vote for me in the upcoming primary. But at the very least, in November, we need to elect more progressives to Congress to fight for our values. So thank you for listening to me, and thank you for your support.